I'm going to Michigan, and I'd love a chance to see you. I've got 2 speaking tour stops on the way. September the 11th in Grand Rapids, September 12th in Farmington Hills. Details are at my website, sethandrews.com/events.
Okay, here we go. Stand by. 3, 2, 1.
The thinking atheist. It's not a person. It's a symbol. An idea.
The population of atheists in this country is going through the roof.
Rejecting faith. Pursuing knowledge. Challenging the sacred.
If I tell the truth, it's because I tell the truth, not because I put my hand on a book and made a wish.
And working together for a more rational world.
Take the risk of thinking for yourself. Much more happiness, truth, beauty, and wisdom will come to you that way.
Assume nothing. Question everything. And start thinking. This is the Thinking Atheist Podcast, hosted by Seth Andrews.
I was given a speech. I guess it's been a couple of years since I gave this speech. It was at a conference in Canada called Imagine No Religion. And the speech was called Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. Honestly, when I wrote the speech, I kind of thought it was one of my more lightweight offerings. I didn't know that it would take off the way it did. It's become one of the most favorite speeches of mine on YouTube, and you can just YouTube search it. Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. There's a podcast version of it, and it just romps through a lot of the crazy shit that we did as religious people that when you look at it, from another perspective, just as stupid. Dear Lord, we ask that you bless this chicken kind of thing. When God closes a door, he opens a window. And Jesus, we ask that you guide the hands of the skilled and trained neurosurgeon. Those types of things. Christianity made me talk like an idiot. Well, in the audience on that day was Richard Dawkins, okay? Now, Dawkins is a cool character. He's just so British. He's hugely generous and polite. He's never been anything but kind to me. I had the chance to meet him in D.C. like in 2012 for the first time. That was the first time I got a chance to shake his hand. I interviewed him after the release of his autobiography, the first book in the autobiography, and I had the honor of telling him that your work, sir, The God Delusion, changed my life. And that's not hyperbole. The truth is that The God Delusion was a game changer. It rattled me in the best possible sense of the word. There's a reason people bring this book up all the time. The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins, is one of the best encapsulations of why we need to reject all this nonsense and why we'd be so much better off without it. It's a masterpiece. So I'm sitting across from him in the interview room, and I'm like, your work changed my life, and I want to thank you personally. I mean, that's a tremendous honor, one I never thought I'd get. And then we rub elbows. Occasionally, we'll bump into each other, usually at the convention circuit, but it's not like we hang. Dawkins isn't like Matt Dillahunty or, Christina Rad or any of those people where you meet him and you're like, hey, what's up? What are you doing? And you give him a big hug and you catch up and you're just swapping stories and shooting the shit. You don't do that with Richard Dawkins. He's kind of in his own head. He seems to be thinking about something lofty somewhere. It doesn't strike me as an act in any way. Like he's just, I don't know. He operates on a different plane. Okay. I'm not saying it's a higher plane, lower plane. It's just different. And so as a result, while I tremendously admire his work, he is sometimes hard to connect with, or you have to struggle a little bit in conversation. You're trying to figure out, how do I approach him? And I've really never seen him in a candid environment where the walls are down and he just seems like he's having the time of his life. Until I gave this freaking speech in Canada. Dawkins is sitting out there at a table, and I look out while I'm doing this, and it's a series of punchlines rooted in Christianity. And the guy is laughing his ass off. And it was so validating. It was like, if I can get this dude, to crack up, that tells me that everybody else must be having a good time too. And that speech has again become one of the most popular speeches that I have ever given. And if you want a good laugh, and if you want kind of a cathartic look at How Religion Damages People, looked at from the other side of religion. You can just find it on YouTube. Christianity Made Me Talk Like an Idiot. Well, Dawkins is kind of a big fish. He's pawed at by everybody, everywhere. He's got more than half a century of science education under his belt. He's done every TV show on the planet. He's just hard to nail down. And I'm sure he is inundated with requests from people who want stuff. Hey, could you sign this? Could you autograph this? Could you do my show? Could you do this interview? Would you read my book? Would you promote my stuff? Etc., etc., etc. Well, I was looking for a new foreword for the second edition of my autobiography, Deconverted. Deconverted is something I'm really proud of, but it needed an update. Not my story, because that's the same. But there's a lot of stuff around the story that needed to be updated as I'm talking about the atheist movement. And in the last section of the book, there's a ton of counter-apologetic stuff that I wrote when I was still freshly emerged out of the faith. I mean, I was writing this stuff before I'd gotten into the arguments as deeply as I have today. And I was looking at the book thinking, this needs a fresh coat of paint. I need to come back and I need to tweak this a little bit to make it better for everybody. And so I've rewritten almost entirely the last 3 chapters. I've tweaked a bunch of the language throughout the book itself. The story remains the same, but it's just told better. And the foreword is now a foreword featuring Richard Dawkins. Holy shit. The man agreed to read the foreword for my book. He wrote and read it, rather. He wrote the print version, and he actually read the audiobook version. And he was so generous and kind. I'm kind of blown away by it. I have to play you just a section of it. All right? Check this out.
Imagine what it must be like to really believe there's a place called hell. Red hot and real. A post-mortem torture chamber of unspeakable horror where you will certainly, without any doubt, spend all eternity if you don't accept Jesus. I mean really, really, really believe it. Believe it in the core of your being. Believe it with as much total conviction as we all believe there's a place called the South Pole where it's very cold. So God is a petulant, vengeful sadist then, a celestial narcissist so ignominiously vain that he'd spit roast you for all eternity for the petty slight of not believing in him. Why would you credit anything so ridiculous? Really, really believe something so implausible? The reason is childishly simple, literally childish. Your parents told you about it when you were a helpless child. Your beloved parents, your teachers, and other respected adults fed it to you when you were too young to know better, when you were vulnerable and gullible, credulous and trusting. That's all it takes. Seth Andrews is spot on right to call it psychological abuse. It is using the weapon of real, palpable terror, literally believed terror, against children. But we should excuse the parents on the grounds that they themselves believe the very same nonsense with the utmost sincerity, and for exactly the same reason. Their own parents fed it to them, and so on back through the generations. And so it will go on forward, unless we find some way to break the tragic cycle and save the children. To achieve that, we need lots more courageous breakaways like Seth Andrews.
So that's the first part of it. Of course, I'm blown away, and I'm not remotely shameless enough to take Dawkins's voice and integrate it into like a personal ringtone or radio bumper, something like that. I'd never do that. No.
We need lots more courageous breakaways like Seth Andrews. We need lots more breakaways. Lots more Andrews. His is a great escape story. I really believe it.
Oh, yeah.
A lighthouse beam of hope for others. Seth did more than break the cycle for himself. He's a gifted communicator.
I didn't make him say this, I promise.
Equipped to guide others out of the pit into which so many were thrown as children by well-meaning parents and grandparents, teachers and preachers. Really believe it.
Poor man has no idea. His voice has been desecrated in this way. Go figure.
Read Seth's book with anything remotely approaching a receptive mind, and you'll see why.
That's just, how did I get here? How did I get to this point in my life? 20 years ago, if you'd have told me you would be an atheist activist, you would have listeners all over the world, Richard Dawkins would write the foreword for your autobiography. What? Actually, 20 years ago, my first question would have been, who the hell's Richard Dawkins? But you know what I'm trying to say. So it's been an amazing time, and the second edition of Deconverted is out. You can tell it's got my face on the cover. It says second edition on the cover. There's now a hardcover option. So there's paperback, there's hardcover. I've reread the entire audible.com version with better audio and some of the language tweaked. And of course, Dawkins read the foreword. If you've bought Deconverted, if you've already got the book, don't buy it again. I'm not trying to sell the same book twice. But if you haven't, it's out there. It's now available in the second edition with, I think, a much better, much more honed message. And the link for that is in the description box, or just go to Amazon.com and type in Deconverted Seth Andrews. It'll pop right up. Exciting days for me. And I just wanted to share it with you. Actually, at this measure, it wouldn't be Dawkins that would be my ringtone. The more I think about it, it would be that clip of Donald Trump. He's on Bloomberg Politics, and he's talking about how the Bible's his favorite book. The Bible's just incredible. The Bible is just special. The Bible means a lot to me. And so they ask him to recite one verse. Do you have one favorite book or one favorite verse in the Bible? And his answer might be my ringtone, because you can hear the discomfort in his voice.
Okay. You mentioned the Bible. You've been talking about how it's your favorite book. And you said, I think last night in Iowa, some people are surprised that you say that. I'm wondering what one or two of your most favored Bible verses are, well, and why.
I wouldn't want to get into it, because to me that's very personal. You know, when I talk about the Bible, it's very personal, so I don't want to get into verses. I don't want to get into...
There's no verse that means a lot to you that you think about or cite?
The Bible means a lot to me, but I don't want to get into specifics.
Even to cite a verse that you like?
No, I don't want to do that.
You're an Old Testament guy or a New Testament guy?
Probably equal. I think it's just an incredible... The whole Bible is an incredible... I joke very much so. They always hold up the Art of the Deal. I say my second favorite book of all time. But I just think the Bible is just something very special.
I mean, how easy is this answer to even fake as a politician? Even if you really don't know the Bible, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish but have everlasting life. How easy is that? You could say 1 Corinthians 13, the love chapter. How many weddings have we been to where somebody's like, love never fails? I love the Gospels, telling the story of Jesus and how he was born and came to earth and lived and sacrificed himself for our sins and rose again and ascended into heaven and is one day going to come back. You don't even have to get specific. Just say the Gospels. How easy is this one to fake? It's obvious this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Yeah, I think I could make that my ringtone. The Bible's a very special book. It's so special. It's amazing. It's my favorite book. My favorite book. What else is going on? Did you see that story about the alleged Mormon Peeping Tom? This guy in Nashville, Tennessee, Stephen Murdoch, 55, a high-ranking member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, as if the Mormons needed to be any creepier. Well, according to the story, there was a woman there who was using a dressing room, and she saw this guy, Stephen Murdoch, pointing a phone camera in her direction while she was in the dressing room. She confronted him. She cornered him into the dressing room so he didn't have any way out. She slapped the phone out of his hands, and then she posted his photograph throughout the store. At the time of the alleged incident, she also called the cops, even though the man's wife was begging her not to alert the authorities. Stephen Murdoch was charged with unlawful photography and released after posting a $1,000 bond after spending one night in jail. His court date, September the 6th. He has been suspended from his role in the Mormon Church. A spokesperson from the Latter-day Saints said, quote, this type of behavior is unacceptable and cannot be tolerated from any church member. I don't mean to be crass. I'm sorry. The words Peeping Tom and church member in the same story, it's hard for me to not make that connection. Well, you know what I mean. I saw an interesting editorial comic. It was by itsthetie.com called He Found Jesus. And honestly, it brought up a couple of questions in my mind. Just a rhetorical question, I guess. You can chew on it if you want. But it has Gregory the axe murderer, and he appears at the pearly gates. And it says, Gregory, the axe murderer, how did you get here? And he looks at St. Peter and he says, I repented. Meaning that he, like Jeffrey Dahmer, accepted Jesus before he died, which means he would get a pass into heaven. He gets a ticket to the party. He gets to spend all of eternity with Jesus and all the Christians, okay? So Gregory the axe murderer is going to heaven, and he runs across one of his victims. And you see the victim out of frame, and you hear this, Greg, is that you? And he shows up, and he's still got the hatchet sticking out of his skull, and he looks at him and he goes, you piece of shit. And I thought to myself, that's a great point. Like Jeffrey Dahmer. How many people did Jeffrey Dahmer kill? He raped and he murdered and dismembered, and he ate some of 17 people over the course of 13 years. But apparently on his deathbed, he submitted himself to Jesus and he got saved. And according to the rules of Scripture, he gets to go to heaven, right? Because even murder is not an unforgivable sin. It's not like blasphemy. Well, murder can be forgiven. So that means that Jeffrey Dahmer would be in heaven right now with all of his victims that happen to be Christian. Okay? What a weird concept. Like if you and I are still us, meaning that our memories are not wiped, transforming us into people who were not us. So the memory wipe thing never worked for me. But we go to heaven and we see somebody who has been genuinely awful on planet Earth, lived a life of death and mayhem and pain and torture and absolute suffering inflicted upon other people. And at the last second, they dropped to their knees and said, Dear Lord, please save me from my sin. And I repent and all that stuff, right? If you confess with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. So if you drop to your knees and do that, you get to go to heaven. Granted, you might have a shack instead of a mansion. Granted, you might have only one jewel in your crown instead of a dozen. But who gives a shit? You're still in heaven. Meanwhile, you have people who've spent their entire lives in service of other human beings who were atheists who are supposed to roast in hell forever. I thought the cartoon was amazing. It actually opens the door to some great discussions, and I would encourage you to look it up. If you can't find it, drop me an email, Seth@thethinkingatheist.com, or I'll put the link in the description box if I think of it. But, should the axe murderer get to spend an eternity in heaven with the Christians and the saints and with Jesus and Yahweh and the Holy Spirit? Or should there be some sort of proportionality discussion here when it comes to the actions on planet Earth? I thought it was interesting myself. Let's go to the switchboard, get some input from our listeners today. Area code 703. Hi, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Evan.
Evan, thanks for calling. What's on your mind today?
Thanks for taking my call. I actually met you at the Colorado Secular Conference at the Yak and Yeti. I talked to you about a podcast that you had done about the Tower of Babel. Briefly.
Yeah. It's called The Tower That Reaches the Heavens. It was interesting, too. We had this amazing dinner the night before the Colorado Secular Conference at a place called the Yak and Yeti, which was Indian food. And it was delicious, and we had a great time. And I just like saying Yak and Yeti. I just think that's fun, but that's just me. But it was a pleasure meeting you, my friend. What's on your mind today?
I also mentioned to you that I had something akin to my own kind of God of Cancer story when I was there. My mother died back in November, and I was there when it happened. And a good majority of my immediate family is extremely religious. And ultimately, I think it was a mitral valve failure that caused the essential problem. There was a lot of grief surrounding it, and there was a lot of praying that happened to it. And in fact, a prayer group arrived literally a minute before she coded. And they did this really elaborate prayer. And while they were working on her, because they were getting ready to do she was having difficulty with her kidneys, I think, not processing the toxins in her system. So they were going to put her on dialysis to clean it out because they couldn't operate on the mitral valve without getting her stable. And so the nurses were like rushing in and working on this while that was going on. And so the prayer thing was happening, and they had just put her on the thing. And there was this like 1 minute prayer that somebody did, and she literally coded a minute after the prayer circle.
Her heart stopped.
Yes.
And the monitor.
Yes. And of course, her heart started, the monitor starts beeping, and the doctors come in and try to get her heart going again. And I mean, she literally, her heart stopped 30 seconds to a minute after the end of the prayer thing. And of course, there were, even before this, every time she rallied, it was God be praised. And here we have this prayer circle. And then immediately after, and it was, oh, God called her to him. And
they didn't blame God for stopping her heart 1 minute after the prayer? I mean,
no.
Somebody needs to call an attorney and sue God, right? God is responsible.
It seemed to me that after all of the God be praised this and that blaming God would have been it. Now, to my stepfather's credit, he did admit that he was angry with God after her death. So to his credit, he was angry, but he didn't blame God for taking her. And in fact, when we had the memorial service, I was expecting the she's in a better place argument. But what I didn't expect was the preacher to say, she's the lucky one because she's with God. And I was just appalled that they would say, she's the lucky one.
You can mold God into any, it's just like that's right. The God of cancer speech, which you referred to, if she gets well, then praise God for the healing. If she stays the same, then she didn't die. Praise God. If she does die, God called her home. She's in a better place with no pain, and we'll all be reunited. It's, an ever-moving goalpost. There's no way for God to lose in that equation. It is interesting to watch people sort of bend God into whatever shape God needs to be in the moment. So thanks for sharing the story, my friend.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
The Lord works in mysterious ways. 606, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Hi, who's this?
Hi, Seth. This is Savannah. I'm from Eastern Kentucky.
Hi, Savannah. What's on your mind today?
About a month ago, I found out that I was pregnant. And I'll start off by saying that I used to be a very avid Christian. I went to church every Wednesday, every Friday, every Sunday. I actually was involved in starting a group at my high school where we could leave school for about an hour and go to the local church up the road and do Christian activities with the preacher for a whole hour or whatever. And since then, of course, I'm an atheist. I've been listening to your podcast for about 3 years, and I'm very concerned with raising a child in Eastern Kentucky because we have this thing now where I'm sure you've heard Trump wants to put all this "In God We Trust" back in schools, and it's everywhere now. No school has an issue doing it, and especially at my husband's high school, they put it pretty big on the walkway, and I'm actually considering homeschooling my child when we have our child because of this. And my family is all Christians. I'm very lost on how to raise my child in a very Christian environment.
You guys got Governor Matt Bevin too, so it's like church every time you guys, see the state government come together, right? Did you see that jacket that he was wearing, the blue jacket with Trump all over it? He was actually wearing the president.
Yes.
And of course, in Kentucky, you've got the Creation Museum and the Ark Encounter.
Yes.
It's just a never-ending kick in the teeth. I'm a big fan of secular homeschools in the right circumstances. But you're saying what? The public schools are so religious that you're thinking of homeschooling your child?
Yes. Actually, a couple of counties over from us, me and my husband we're very avid atheists. We actually go out of our way to post our opinions on these things on social media just to show that, the majority may be Christian, but there are people who care about these things, that they don't want their children forced into these things. There's a school a couple of counties over that has what they called a prayer locker. And although it's not illegal, it's still one of those things that I really don't like to see in schools, because I was in high school and I know the type of people that do those things, and I know that it's meant to single out the people who don't believe or who are different from those Christians, because they will put things like, oh, well, I want to pray for so-and-so because they're an atheist. And it's not, these Christians don't mean well. They want to, single people out and make them feel bad for their religious views.
Do me a favor, send me an email, Seth@thethinkingatheist.com. I don't know what part of Kentucky you're in. Remind me.
I'm actually in Salyersville, Kentucky.
Okay. I don't know where that is, but I'm going to have you email me, and I know a couple of free thought groups in Kentucky that might have some resources for you. So while you are essentially living in a big church, there are some...
Basically, honestly, here, there's a church on every corner here. I can drive 5 minutes down the road and there's a church.
I know. When I drive by the Ark Encounter billboards, I just grieve for the entire state of Kentucky. Beautiful country. And they've got some great horse racing.
Unfortunately, we're washed in Christianity.
Yeah. If I can hook you up with a free thought group in the area, maybe they've got some resources for you and your child that I do not. But I'm all about trying to connect people who might be able to benefit from each other. Okay. So Seth@thethinkingatheist.com. Just say it's Savannah. I will know who it is, and I will see if I can connect you guys. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Seth.
All right. Take care of yourself.
Thank you.
You bet. It's great to be able to talk to you. 856. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Matt.
Matt, what's on your mind today, my friend?
I've actually recently come out to my family and my friends as an atheist. Been an atheist for quite a while, and I was wondering if I could maybe pick your brain and get some advice on the being shunned.
Oh, my God. You're talking to a guy who's got a rather tenuous relationship with his own family, so I don't know if I have any great wisdom, but I'm certainly a listening ear, and maybe we can walk through some of it. You say shunned outright, like they've cast you off?
Except for my mom. My mom's the only one still sticking around.
So you, had a sit-down with him? What'd you do, send an email?
No, I just as I was in social situations with them, I decided it was time to stop faking it, because I tried to fake it till you make it for 4 years once I realized I was actually an atheist. And, that didn't work out well for me. And the reason that I'm calling in is it's become so peculiar is the only one that will talk to me is my grandmother. And, she won't even sit next to me anymore.
Can I ask how old you are?
I am 32.
Okay. So, you've already got your legs under you, right? It's not like you're living at home and you're worried about being financially penalized in some way. This is more about
correct
having a connection, a relational connection with your family.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine a scenario where if your mother or father, siblings came to you and they said, I believe in God, that you would ever say to them, I want nothing to do with you, and that you would shun them?
I could not possibly do that. They're my family.
Yeah.
That's unacceptable to me. I might not agree, but I still love them.
But they're doing it to you?
Yes.
From your perspective, why do you think they do that?
The biggest reason I can come up with is they feel I have betrayed the family because my grandfather, who has recently passed, was a pastor.
So it was charged to you to carry the mantle.
Aside from my older brother, I'm the oldest living grandson in the family.
They then expect you to live their life. Would that be accurate?
I can imagine so, but they don't talk to me much, so I don't know exactly what they expect from me.
Well, they expect you to be a Christian. They expect you to follow in the family line and carry on the family faith, right?
Yes.
And they would never abide that kind of expectation in their own lives. Let's say that your family was mostly atheist. Grandfather was an atheist activist, and he's expected you, the grandchild, to continue his atheist activism, or else we'll shun you. Do you think they would reject their faith if they were charged to do that?
No.
They would never allow someone else to tell them not to believe, but they are telling you to believe, or else.
Yeah.
So if that's the case, we have to ask ourselves, are they more in love with you as their child, son, grandson, whatever, or are they more in love with their religious faith? And I'm not trying to turn the screw here. This is just a set of important questions I think we need to address. Do they love you more than they love their faith, or vice versa?
I personally say they're more afraid of me messing with, because uncles, aunts, they have children, my cousins and such. They're more afraid of me taking them away by giving them a different mindset.
So the idea that there's somebody in the ranks who doesn't toe the family line and might influence the nephews and nieces and grandkids and anybody who's at the family reunion on Thanksgiving, that terrifies them.
Yeah.
It should. I mean, it shouldn't terrify them, but we have to examine what kind of insecurity creates this environment. I mean, they believe that they have locked on to the absolute truth, the irrefutable truth with a capital T, and that Satan is already defeated, and that there is no question that this belief system is accurate. It is the Rock of Gibraltar, right? And yet, out of one side of the mouth, they're saying this. Out of the other side of the mouth, they're terrified of an opposing point of view or a point of disagreement, which reveals that they may not be as convinced about their own faith as they say they are. I mean, does your gut tell you that they might be afraid that you might say something that makes sense?
Yeah, especially because when I did my stint as a Buddhist, well, because I was an atheist, but that was at least a religion and they could accept that, they didn't want me talking about it at all.
But if you had said to them, I don't want you talking about Jesus around me, what would they have responded with?
Shut up, I'm your senior, do as I tell you. That's my right.
Yeah, right? I mean, you see the double standard. This is called Christian privilege. They have allowed themselves all this latitude, but they're telling you, you don't get the same latitude in your own life. You don't get to be you. You don't get to speak to your values. You don't get to talk about the things that are important to you or ask the questions that are relevant to you. Those you do not get to do. But if you were to make that same demand of them, they would be aghast. They'd be offended. They would be horrified. Why would you ever ask me not to be true to myself? And so at the end of the day, my friend, I know there are consequences to everything that you're involved with, but it would be a tragedy if you were not true to yourself while everybody else in your family was true to themselves. If you were the one who actually had to fold because someone else was uncomfortable. You aren't on this earth to make other people comfortable, my friend. You're here on this earth pursuing goals that you choose, designing your own sense of purpose, and pursuing the facts, the data, the evidence, the truth on your terms. And so the idea is not to make sure mom and dad and everybody else are happy and comfortable and that they will invite me to the next reunion, but that you are living an authentic life. And that would be my hope for you. I don't know if that helps at all.
It helps a lot because that's what I've been struggling with, how to be me and keep the people I love around. And it's kind of feeling if they're not going to let me stay around, I'm not going to leave. I'm not going to run and be like, yeah, screw you guys. No, I'm not doing that.
That's a line that they're drawing. You're absolutely right. Right?
Yeah.
You're saying I'm available. I'm right here. And if you lock me out, you're the ones who actually set that lock in place. I would encourage you as well to try something. And if it works, if it doesn't work, let me know. Next time you're sitting down, have the same conversation with them that I just had with you. You know, mom, dad, look, if I was to ask you the same thing that you ask me, to never talk about your values or to talk about your faith or to talk about the things that were important to you, how would that make you feel? What would your response be to me? Would you ever shut up about the things that you thought mattered in this world? And watch them. They'll be like, no, we have to talk about it. But that might be the first time that they're able to see it through the looking glass the other way. and realize that they are asking you to do something they would never accept in their own lives. And you're able to do so with empathy and compassion as a son. You're not attacking them. You're saying, look, can you see how all of this looks and sounds? And it might create a little bit of a fissure, a little bit of a crack, where you then can begin to weave in more of yourself into those conversations, and they might become more accepting, not agreeing, but accepting you for who you are. I would try that. Mom, Dad, would you do this stuff in your own life that you're asking me to do in mine? Or would you say, no, my life is mine to live? Give that a shot. See what happens, okay?
Thank you very much. I will definitely take that to heart and give that a shot.
All right, well,
I really
for what
think
it's
that will
worth.
help a lot.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate you very much. Short break. When I come right back, it's more of your calls as we go back to the switchboard and see what our listeners have to say, your comments and questions on the other side of this. Human beings have been shaving for thousands of years. Did our forefathers need a flex ball shaving head with a vibrating handle heated over a campfire? Of course not. And neither do we. Harry's already knows what you and I know. A great shave comes down to sharp, durable blades. No gimmicks, no nonsense, and no markups for all the stuff we don't need. Join the 10 million who have tried Harry's when you go to harrys.com/thethinkingatheist. I shave with Harry's razors. I love them. I love the fact that I've got a quality shave set instead of cheap disposables when I travel. And for me, Harry's just makes a lot of sense. They own a world-class blade factory in Germany that's been making some of the best razor blades on the planet since before I was born. Harry's provides directly to me, so there's no middleman. And Harry's guarantees satisfaction with a full refund if I don't absolutely love my shave. And of course, I do love Harry's. I think you will as well. They're a great supporter of this broadcast. Listeners of my show can redeem their Harry's trial set at harrys.com/thethinkingatheist. You'll get a weighted ergonomic handle for a firm grip, 5-blade razor with lubricating strip and trimmer blade, rich lathering shave gel with aloe to keep your skin hydrated, and a travel blade cover to keep your razor dry and easy on the go. Go to harrys.com/thethinkingatheist to start shaving better today. My patrons get this broadcast commercial-free, and they get it a couple of days early. And if you're a patron, thank you. If you're not, please consider it at patreon.com/Seth Andrews. We are just taking some listener calls today, kind of a potpourri of opinions, comments, whatever, from you. So let's go back to the switchboard and see what you have to say. Area code 812, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
This is Sarah.
What's going on?
Oh, I've been listening to your show for several years, and I really love what you do.
Thank you.
Really, really do. And I'm floored by the stories that I hear. I've been an atheist since I was 12. I can remember like it was yesterday where I was, what I was doing. I had went out to feed our cows. I lived on a farm, a small farm, and I was just walking back, and this voice in my head said, you know, there's probably not a God. And I just stopped. And that began my search for answers. Of course, this was 44 years ago, so didn't have the internet. I started with reading the Bible, and I did not like what I read. Didn't like it at all. In fact, it kind of pissed me off, which led to me really having a lot of feminist views. I wanted to ride better. I wanted to throw rocks further. I wanted to run faster than all the boys because I didn't like the patriarchy. So it's just been so upsetting to me to hear so many stories of people that are raised in Christianity and the trauma that they go through when they try and leave. And I'm so thankful that I've never had to deal with that. So I really, really appreciate what you do. I mean, seriously, dude.
Oh, well,
it's just amazing to me.
I think we only have each other. So it's nice to be able to have even online, a community of people who can support each other. And it's not just me. It's amazing to see the people in the chat when we have a caller who's talking about being shunned or ostracized. They just rally around. There's like this sort of virtual group hug that takes place, and people are like, if you need somebody, let me know. If you got to talk, let me know. It's really amazing to see people reaching out. But thank you for noticing, and thanks for the kind words. I envy you having figured it out so early.
I just think it's so important that people accept other people's views. And with religion, I don't see it. They say they're accepting, but they're not. Yeah. And that really upsets me that they don't have a problem putting people through all this trauma when they wouldn't want to go through it themselves.
Well, you are a reminder of the importance of community and how much we really do need each other. So thank you so very much for the call.
You're welcome, Seth.
All right.
You guys have a great afternoon.
Take care.
Bye.
I think people get respect. Ideas have to earn it. That's why I think that Islamophobe is a bullshit term. Because we've been having this conversation recently on Twitter. People say, well, if you're an Islamophobe, you're a racist. And I'm always like, Islam is not a race. It's an idea. And ideas don't get respect. Ideas have to earn it. So you can go up to a flat earther and you can be respectful to the human being. But you don't have to respect the flat earth belief. You can go up to a Scientologist and you can have respect for the human being, but you don't have to have respect for Scientology, etc. Ideas have to earn respect out there in the ether. And so we don't start off by saying, well, everyone should have equal amount of respect for their beliefs. No, the people get respect. The beliefs, well, I'll get back to you on that one. Area code 480. Thanks for waiting. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Who's this?
Hi, this is your friend Alex from Phoenix, Arizona.
Alex, I'll be in Phoenix November 9th with Matt Dillahunty. It's going to be a great day out there. What's going on in your world?
Essentially, I own a business, and I'm thankful in that I work by myself and have a little bit of a privilege in the way that I can, as I say, in that I can actually fire my clients. But I'm curious to know your thoughts about people who do work in trades, who do visit other people's homes. Like I go into all sorts of people's homes, whether they be theists of all stripes or whatever. And generally speaking, I keep my mouth shut. I don't try to challenge them on it, but on the other hand, I'm kind of unapologetically atheist. I wear my atheism on my sleeves quite literally. But and I'm curious to know your thoughts about other people who go into trades and your advice for them about what they could do whenever they enter a space where they may feel like, feel that they just aren't going to be welcomed there.
Well, if you're bringing someone into your space and they're religious, then I think you have every right to challenge and say, no, we're not going to have a religious practice here, or I disagree. But if you're a professional going into someone else's home as part of your job, I'm not sure why religion or atheism would be a part of those conversations.
Yeah, that's what my question was, is essentially, how it tends to be that, where do you go to church? That famous question. If that should come up, say for instance, I'm eventually going to start hiring individuals. If there's someone in someone else's home and that question comes up, how would you advise that employee to either not engage or whatever?
Well, that's a question of boundaries. If I'm in somebody's home and they say, where do you go to church? Then I can respond honestly. I don't, and I can respond any way I choose depending on how I assess things. If I think there's going to be a conflict and I don't want to hurt the company, I say, well, I don't have a church home. If I feel like I want to be absolutely forthright, I say, I don't go to church, or I'm not religious. And if I want to be really bold, I just say, well, I'm an atheist. I think if you're directly asked that question, the person who has asked you is essentially open Pandora's box. They're the ones who are, they'll deserve whatever answer that they get. If you're getting to someone's personal life in a professional setting and you say, what God do you believe in? They sort of set that wheel in motion. So it's not really on you if you answer the question honestly. Sadly, sometimes this has repercussions. Sometimes it has repercussions for the company, for the owner, and it could make things sticky for the employees. So this is all cost benefit. I think you have to know your employer. You have to know where the hot buttons are. You have to know what the stakes are. And you have to be strategic, playing chess, not checkers. And if you think there's a chance the client's going to call the boss and you might lose your job or something else is going to happen. I mean, like I say, according to the letter of the law, you can't lose your job for being an atheist, but discrimination so often works between the letters of the law. You know, you weren't fired because you were an atheist and cost us a client. You're fired because you have quote unquote poor communication skills. That's how discrimination works. But, you know, if somebody asks you, why not? Hell, everybody else is saying what they do and why they do it. If someone says, say, where do you go to church? And you don't go to church, the right answer is, I don't go to church. And I don't think it's any more complicated than that. And you can decide exactly how to phrase it, but that's the answer. If it's the truth, be truthful. Okay?
Fantastic. Thank you.
Appreciate you very much. If you're doing work for your company, your boss, your supervisor, and you're making a living, you're clocking in, you're working hard, you do your job with excellence, and someone says, hey, where do you go to church? And I say, I don't go to church. And that person says, I'm canceling my contract. Whose fault is that really? It's the customer's fault because they're being bigoted against you. They're not interested at that moment in, hey, is he doing an excellent job for me? For them, the religious question trumps all, and that's on the customer. It's not on you. Area code 657. Thanks for waiting. You are on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Tell me your name. Who's this?
Hi, this is David from California.
David, what's on your mind?
Firstly, I'm really nervous to call. I feel like I've been questioning my faith. I'm actually 18 years old.
Okay.
So
well, you're doing
I'm
great.
on the younger side.
Doing great. So you're coming out of, you're in what faith? What faith are you questioning?
Christian evangelical.
Okay.
And I started watching actually the Atheist Experience. So that's what actually began my questioning process. But I'm finding the transition from thinking rationally from irrationally to be so difficult. Initially when I started, it was actually really damaging at night. I would have nightmares because I thought that I wasn't following the word. I was doubting, and I thought that this was a demonic presence trying to influence me. And eventually, also I am gay. And I always learned within the church. Now, I think that at least in California, in SoCal, they're a little bit less homophobic. I think it's also due to the area. But what they used to tell me was, you can feel this way, but you can't act on it. You know, so that was also very challenging for me because I felt like I needed to extend a part of myself for God because that's what you do as a Christian. You know, I think for atheists, for example, they don't understand the psychological toll that it takes on you. So therefore they go and, oh, you're dumb, you're stupid, no, is that we're indoctrinated. And I even say that conscientiously, and I still can't escape the framework, of I'm watching something and I view it as demonic. I couldn't even get braids in my hair because I thought that it was a dedication to a demon named Shakti. And I just got so fed up with being so controlled. And I'm having such a difficult time with the transition because I feel like atheists also I think you have the empathy for it because you used to be Christian for many years. So when you're surrounded by these people who love you unconditionally or claim to, say your family, they bring you in, yet when you're suffering, you'll learn that it's not God's fault, it's your fault. Your faith is weak. And it became this circular argument to me. I can be hurting inside because of this faith, yet it's not the faith's fault, it's my fault. And I think my question is just, firstly, I wanted to let atheists know to be a little bit kinder to believers. you have no idea the torture that goes through their heads. Like, it's like submitting to logic is the devil. It is evil. It is the Antichrist. It kills God. If God was really all powerful, he wouldn't be able to die just by using your brain. But that's the case. So my advice is that I just wish that people could be kinder, make fun of them less, gather like a little bit more empathy. But my second question is, how did you escape the indoctrination process, and what was the difficult parts for you, and how did that look?
Well, let me start by saying that you're doing great. Like, you say you're nervous, but you are telling your story in a compelling way, and I think you've got everybody on the radio just sort of hanging on your every word. Like, we are taking you personally. You're doing fantastic. Okay, so don't beat yourself up.
Thank you.
You're doing really good. I'm guessing, and don't let me project too much here. Tell me if I have this right. I'm guessing this is a mind-heart battle. In your mind, you know that much of this doesn't really wash, and that it's not adding up, and the square peg is not going into the round hole. But in your heart, in that place where they fed you all of this information from your earliest memories, you are afraid. You're afraid, what if I'm wrong? I don't want to go to hell. What if it really is a demonic attack? What if my family shuns me? What are the implications of me walking away from the religion of my family? Is it a mind-heart tug of war right now?
Absolutely. I would absolutely describe it as that.
When I first came out of the faith, I couldn't sleep at night. I was sort of in my journey. I hadn't yet said the word atheist, but I was up in the middle of the night, just my gut was in a knot, and I was staring at the ceiling, and my heart was racing. It sounds so dramatic when I say this, but it was absolutely true. It was like a panic attack where you think, what if I continue down the rabbit hole and it ruins my life? What if I continue down the rabbit hole and I was wrong and I burn forever? I mean, there's no taking that back. And it took a while for my heart to catch up with my brain. I, in my mind, realized in 2008 that I was an atheist. Now, I'm not saying you have to come to that conclusion. Your journey belongs to you. I'm just telling you about me, okay? I came to the point at the end where I examined the Bible. I went into religious history. I looked at all of the other major religions. I asked the questions. I had these meetings with apologists. I prayed. I asked for God to reveal himself. I did all the stuff that I knew to do. And at the end of the day, I realized I just don't buy it. And I was honest with myself in my rational brain and said, I am an atheist. But for another 2 years in my heart, I was still scared. I was scared that I was going to lose everything. I was scared that I was going to go to hell. I was scared about all that stuff. My heart took a while to catch up with my brain. And I think understanding that helps a little bit. Emotions leading us around, that'll make you flat crazy, right? I mean, you feel some of that in your own life, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I also think that you have to give yourself permission to doubt. Think about God in the context of benevolence. Think of a parent and a child. Would a truly loving parent see a child who was trying to live honestly and truthfully and trying to figure out what was real and what was not? Would that parent then punish the child for trying to live an authentic life? And I used that term earlier in the show. The fact is that a genuinely benevolent God would reward the child for trying to figure it out, for trying to live honestly. And so the idea that a just, loving, benevolent God is going to hurt you because you have questions and you want to be yourself and you want to find out what the answer is on your terms. We can already decide that God would not be benevolent if that God threatened to burn you for eternity. That God would not be any God that we would want anything to do with. That is not love. That is a threat. It's tyranny. It's a tyranny of the mind and of the heart. And what has helped me in my own life is to learn how people have used the devil and hell to control other people, to keep them in the dark, to keep them from asking questions, to keep them from ever really going too far outside the wall. And once you realize how much of a mechanism for control hell and the devil have been, then you realize it's a human-made thing. And it becomes easier to get past it and to overcome it. And then as your mind is embracing rationality and as you're following the chains of evidence, your heart will eventually start to calm down and it will follow you on that journey. But the mind is the locomotive on the train, right? Your emotions don't lead you on the journey. Your rational mind leads you, and your heart will, even if it's the caboose, will follow you on that journey. I want you to do me a favor. I want you to, I'm going to have you send me an email, Seth@thethinkingatheist.com. I'm going to send you a copy of my personal story, Deconverted, for I just want to send it to you. It's not Hitchens, all right? It's not a brilliant book, but you and I have walked a lot of the same steps, right? We both believe in the Christian God. We both believe in the Bible. We're both raised evangelical. We both were heavily indoctrinated. We both have gone through that valley of doubt. Both have experienced those moments where you think, what if I get it wrong? I don't want to go to hell. And we both are terrified of hell in some way. Well, I'll bet you are able to relate enough to my story that it might actually encourage you in your story. Would that be something you're interested in if I was to shoot something your direction?
Absolutely. I think that it's really beautiful to see. If it wasn't for people challenging these things, I don't think I would have ever been able to escape. It just kind of becomes hell to you, because you also learn that to fear God is to revere God. So you're kind of like, you have this fear in your heart as a believer when an atheist comes and you believe that's righteousness. It also tells you, I think somewhere in Micah, to not trust your mind. It legit says that.
Can you imagine that a God gave you a curious and rational mind and then said, don't use it, don't trust it?
Yeah. And I think also it just, when you begin to, it also says to go by faith. And this is like a huge argument. Like, this is where the atheists, kind of get the upper hand. Because the fact that, you know, Matt says it all the time, and it might be kind of irritating at this point, but you can believe anything off of faith, So it's just really, it's really challenging. And I believe you understand, and I do want to read your story.
It sounds to me like your mind is already latching on to what fits. It's just giving your heart permission to follow on the journey. Just the vibe I'm getting for us talking. I mean, you don't talk like a devout believer. You don't even really talk like a believer. Now, I'm not trying to say who you are. You talk like someone who's a skeptic. And that's a good place to be. And you can make the promise to anybody within earshot. Look, I'm not out to kill God. I just want to know what's true. Whatever the truth is, let's go do that. And then give yourself permission to take that journey. And if the answer comes back that, there's no evidence for any God, to be honest with yourself about it. And the second thing I want to say, and I want to leave you with this, is that you are not broken. Non-heterosexuality is an absolutely natural and healthy expression of sexuality, and not just in the human species, but in hundreds of species all around the planet. Relationships that don't fit that biblical model, we see them in nature everywhere we look. Who you are, what you are, how you are is perfectly legitimate as anybody else. You have value. You shouldn't ever beat yourself up for acknowledging what you feel, what your attractions are, what your desires are in your heart and in your mind, and embracing who you are instead of feeling shame. I don't want you to live a life riddled with shame. I want you to look at yourself and see something that has value and beauty that deserves so much more than to be jammed into someone else's cookie cutter. You are important just the way you are, and you should never change for any of us. Are you hearing me?
Yeah.
Okay.
I appreciate that so much. Last thing I'll say is about being gay. It's hard because we're also taught to look at the world and see gay people as like it's an agenda. They're trying to be accepted, but we have to fight them. We have to fight these people. And now that I'm stepping out of it, I'm like, it's this invisible war, and it makes no sense to me. But Thank you for that, because you never get told that by God. I don't think the Bible does have some good things, bad things, but acceptance is not there whatsoever.
Acceptance for just who you are isn't. Yeah, that's not really Yahweh's calling card. It's
the opposite.
Yeah. It's funny. My best friend came out to me as gay when I was in my 30s. I think it was late 20s, something like that. And I was a devout Christian, and I was going through that same stuff. Gays are going to hell. Gays are condemned by God. And I remember projecting that onto him. I was worried for his eternal soul, and can we ever even be friends, and any of those types of things. And then I realized that, the problem wasn't Corey. The problem was me. The problem was the church. The problem was my faith. They wanted everyone to be like them. And differences, variations, things that didn't fit inside this mold, this religious mold, they just wouldn't process. And when I stepped out of that mold and I accepted Corey for who he is, we established a relationship, an even tighter bond than we'd ever had before. And we've been friends for almost 40 years. My friend, there is love and acceptance out there. Just remember that on your own journey, okay?
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
And send me a message, Seth@thethinkingatheist.com, and let me send you my story in the hopes that it will encourage you in your journey, okay?
All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking my call.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you. You take care.
You too. Bye.
I have goosebumps like on my arms. Like when I hear someone being so transparent, their lives are really a difficult and yet amazing journey. And they're on this precipice where, will the future open up to a point where they can embrace themselves and say, I do have value. I'm not going to be an echo of somebody else's voice, and I am going to go figure it out, and I am going to ask the tough questions, and I am going to be me for the reasons I choose, and I'm going to assign my own sense of purpose, and I'm not going to walk in somebody else's shoes for the rest of my life, somebody else's path. I'm going to go out and I'm going to take a shovel. I'm going to carve a path of my own for my reasons without apology, damn it. I mean, is he right there, right on the precipice of that? I certainly hope so. But ultimately, if he's giving himself permission to take the journey on his own terms, that's an important first step. 850, you're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Hi, who's this?
Hi, Seth. This is Stephanie in Pensacola.
Hi, Stephanie. Talk to me. What's on your mind?
I had a quick question, but first I just need to say that I'm just so proud of David for calling in and sharing this story, and I'm thankful for your response. Just as a fellow atheist and a fellow non-heterosexual person, I couldn't imagine calling in at his age and expressing all of that so honestly and clearly, and I'm just really proud of him and thankful for his time, and I hope he's really happy with his call.
You see, David? We got backup immediately on the next call on the switchboard, so there's a tremendous number of people out here who have your back. Thanks for saying that. What else did you have on your mind today?
I remember a while back on Facebook you mentioned about maybe doing a stream about polyamory. And I just wanted to ask, is that something you're still thinking?
Yeah, I think I'm going to do a show on polyamory. I'm interested in it. It's, everyone fashions their relationship in a different way, but I know that there's a lot of polyamorous people in atheist circles. Would you say that's correct?
I've gotten that impression also. I personally am in a monogamous relationship, but I am in total support of any enthusiastically consenting relationship. I was kind of half-raised Catholic.
Oh, yeah. Well, so you know what it's like.
You said that you wanted to shake my dad's hand.
You know what it's like to stand in judgment of other people and what they do in the bedroom. And, that's just not natural, that kind of talk, right?
Well, actually, no. I've never really been that judgmental.
And you came out of Catholicism?
Yes.
Okay.
I definitely dealt with some of the shame.
Yeah.
But I myself, was an atheist at a very early age. And I did go through at first, the idea of like, okay, I'm not heterosexual. That's not good according to what I'm being told. But then after a while, I realized, okay, there are people who aren't straight. Like at first I was like, okay, you can be either gay or straight. Like at a very early age, that's the first impression I got. And at first, of course, I got the impression that, many, many people do not like that people are gay. But of course, I was able to relate that to the fact that, okay, there's racist people too. Like people can be wrong. People make bad judgments.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm going to do a show on polyamory. I'm interested in it, not for my own life. I'm in a monogamous relationship. Natalie and I, we were committed exclusively to each other. But I'm interested because we've been talking about how do you make that work? Is there ever jealousy involved if you're in a relationship with multiple partners? And what are the emotional dynamics at play in a polyamorous union? And those types of things. And I've got a bunch of people on tap who want to participate, they're like, I'm in one or I came out of one and I want to talk about it. So I think I'll probably schedule that for the end of September, maybe first part of October sometime. So keep your ears open for that, okay?
Okay, awesome. I actually watched a video a while back by someone named Cyrus the Skeptic on YouTube. He's also an atheist in a polyamorous relationship, and he just did a great video just explaining everything.
What's the name? Because I might want to connect with this person for the show.
On YouTube, he's known as Cyrus the Skeptic. That's S-U-R-I-S.
S-U-R-I-S. All right, let me reach out and I'll see if maybe...
The Skeptic, yep.
Cyrus the Skeptic. All right, I'll reach out and see if maybe Cyrus wants to participate in that discussion here in about a month or so, okay?
Awesome, thank you so much.
All right, you take care. One more, 979. You're on the Thinking Atheist podcast. Thank you so much for waiting. Who's this?
My name is Jonathan Wilson. I'm from Texas.
Jonathan, what's on your mind today?
I'm actually a newer atheist. I've been an atheist for a little bit over a week. My question was, what's the best advice you could give a newer atheist?
Well, that's a broad question. I mean, a new atheist that came out of fundamentalist religion?
I was actually a Christian for 15 years, then I dabbled in Satanism and then paganism and just lost all faith in theistic religion.
Well, I think the advice to the new atheist would be the same advice I'd give to someone who's been an atheist their entire lives. Just make every day a discovery. Ask the hard questions. Live your life as truthfully as possible. Don't forget your own humanity when you're out there swimming through the mountain of data, separating the true from the false. And don't forget to live your life. If we realize that there's no evidence for a heaven, that means we absolutely should maximize the moments we have on planet Earth. And I think sometimes we forget that. We get so busy punching the clock and arguing on Twitter and doing the stuff that, sort of diminishes us. We forget that, if there is no tomorrow, that we should remember the good stuff. Love who you love and find the good music and take the trip and pursue the goal and achieve the dream and make life absolutely the most it can be, because there is no evidence that there's a life 2.0 to come after that. That would be the advice I'd give for what it's worth. Okay?
Okay, thanks. I also have another question right quick.
Mm-hmm.
What books would you recommend that I check out? Right now, all I have is on Origin of Species by Charles Darwin and Foundational Falsehoods of Creationism by Aaron Roth.
What are you trying to accomplish with the books? What do you want? What are you looking for?
I'm trying to basically, of course, I still struggle with the creationism thing, so I'm trying to get my brain to accept more of like, hey, this stuff didn't come out of nowhere.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a bunch of good stuff. I've mentioned earlier in the show, Richard Dawkins' The God Delusion is a masterpiece. Okay? So even if it's not at the top of your reading list, it should be on your list. If you're into Bible...
I have that on audiobook.
Okay, fantastic. If you're into religious criticism, getting into the Bible, Dan Barker's got a great book called The Most Unpleasant Character in All Fiction, which debunks the idea of a good God. I'm a huge fan of Carl Sagan and the Demon-Haunted World.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There's so much good stuff. I tell you, on my website, thethinkingatheist.com, there's a tab that says links. And you'll find YouTube videos, you'll find podcasts, and you'll also find a series of books that are designed as introductions, the toe in the water to religious skepticism and science education. That page is much better than any short list I could give you on the radio. Thethinkingatheist.com, and then go to links, and you'll see the books listed there with their covers, and you can browse and decide which one you want. And I've linked to the Amazon pages so you can just purchase from there, okay?
And I also wanted to thank you for, being so kind and everything. I've watched the podcast on and off, every once in a while. And, watching your podcast and Mr. Atheist's podcast and the Atheist Experience has actually started to kind of just made me think more rationally than more on a religious side.
Awesome. That's amazing. Well, thanks for the kind words. It means a lot. And you keep kicking, okay?
All right. Thank you.
All right. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much to everybody for your calls, for participating. Thanks to everybody in the chat who has been showing so much support. And I know that this is a community. At the end of the day, yeah, there's content to watch and to listen to, but it's really about the connection of human beings, people from all around the world who have each other's backs and are supporting each other's right to be who they are, to learn, to grow, to challenge each other, to be better tomorrow than we are today, to live an authentic life. Man, that's what we want to see for everybody. Thanks again. Have a wonderful week. I'll see you back here next time.
Follow The Thinking Atheist on Facebook and Twitter for a complete archive of podcasts and videos, products like mugs and t-shirts featuring the Thinking Atheist logo, links to atheist pages and resources, and details on upcoming free thought events and conventions. Log on to our website, thethinkingatheist.com.